Hello YouTube and welcome back to the Drunken Kobold. Today we are reviewing Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft released on May 18th, 2021 and is a bit of a hefty supplement with lots to look over, so without further ado, let's hop into it. Let's start things off with new races. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft has attempted a new approach to races called lineages. These new lineages can serve as your initial starting character, or can be a form your character is transformed into throughout the course of the game. The new lineages are Dhampir, Hexblood, and Reborn. All of these are really flavorful and are not either underpowered or overpowered, and are a great addition to the D&D lineup as they don't just fit the demiplane of Dread, but can also be part of your material plane games too, as none of them have an origin specifically tied to a domain. Next, let's look at Dark Gifts. Dark Gifts are a sort of boon that your players can start the game with, or be granted by the DM at the player's greatest time of peril. Each of the Dark Gifts has a pretty decent mechanical ability that will aid the players during the game, and each Dark Gift has a lot of ways to create roleplay opportunities. So these are sure to be able to serve as interesting dilemmas to your players. Did we mention that each gift comes at a cost though? Well, each gift has a drawback attached to it that activates on either a predetermined trigger, such as rolling a 1, or a trigger that is determined from a random table. I love the idea of Dark Gifts for a Demi-Planes of Dread campaign, but the origins of the gifts being from the dark powers of the Mist make working these gifts into a regular D&D campaign an interesting but not hard task. Many players may be wondering, how many Dark Gifts can I have? By Raw, you can only have one Dark Gift at a time, but I don't see a reason why an evil player who has reached level 20 can't have additional Dark Gifts granted as epic boons, similar to the ones found in the Dungeon Master's Guide. New subclasses for the Bard and Warlock feature in Van Richten's. The College of Spirits Bard was upon my first impressions the most flavorful and interesting of the two new subclasses. The ability to channel and conjure spirits, whether real or fictitious, was very flavorful and reminded me of a few horror tropes from Hollywood, particularly fake mediums who dig themselves a little too deep of a hole with the supernatural. The Undead Warlock appeared very underwhelming to me at first, but considering its versatility outside of the Demi-Planes of Dread and their canonical appearances in past D&D lore, I have found a new love for the Undead Warlock, and some prospective brews I've seen floating around make me really excited to take this new subclass for a spin. The only thing I feel was missing from this section was the idea of a darker evil cleric who draws their power from the mists. The new background features for me, while underwhelming from a mechanical standpoint, are really flavorful. I really do appreciate the reprint of Haunted One background from Curse of Strahd. However, Curse of Strahd definitely did do a better job on fleshing out the background than Van Richten's. It's important to note that the Investigator featured in Van Richten's is not a reprint of the Investigator variant found in Sword's Coast Adventurer's Guide, and though background feats share names with past published backgrounds, they are also not reprints. Speaking of reprints, it's important to note that a fair bit of the material from here has been selected and reprinted from past publications in the TSR era of D&D. So to get the full context of the content of this book, I highly recommend those publications too. They can be found on the credits page of Van Richten's, and additional content from the TSR era can be found on the Dungeon Masters Guild. The content in Chapter 2, Creating Domains of Dread, is really helpful for those who don't want to play an established domain and want to create their own. Perhaps you had a past character who was a really terrible person and committed many dark acts, and you want their final fate to be that of a Dark Lord in the Domains of Dread? Now it's entirely possible. I love when books have sections for creating your own content to add to established content, and this section truly shows how expansive and limitless the Domains of Dread may really be. Chapter 3 describes the current official Domains of Dread. Some of the domains include maps, and all of them describe their Dark Lord and what theme of horror is present in each domain. As guess what? Not all of them are gothic horror like we had presented to us in Curse of Strahd. I would say that this chapter, though interesting in terms of established content, was a huge missed opportunity. The domains that are here have already been extensively built on, and its real opportunity was to highlight and build on the lesser known domains. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is specially selected content that has been reprinted and adapted to the 5e era. So having established content for the price of this book, that I could buy several books from the DM's Guild and get more content, is kind of disappointing. And the biggest flaw of this section is going to be discussed in Chapter 5. Chapter 4 is how to build and run horror content. I did a segment on how to build horror campaigns and one-shots on the first episode of Dragon's Collective, which I will link to in the description below. In that segment, I drew a lot of inspiration from the horror genre in cinema, so I highly recommend checking it out. This section includes tips on how to start your campaign in session 0 and how to wrap up the campaign, and after reading them, I really could not have said it better myself. This section also includes one-shot adventure, The House of Lament. Although this is not a sequel to Death House from Curse of Strahd, it is an adventure in the same vein, and I can guarantee your players who still have their souls will love it. Since I've mentioned it quite a bit, how does Curse of Strahd fit into this, and how compatible is Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft with Curse of Strahd? Curse of Strahd, outside of the main adventure, has lots of content that was deemed unnecessary for reprinting in Van Richten's, and is a great supplement if you plan on running adventures in either your own Domain of Dread or any of the other established ones. Where the two really pair up, though, is Van Richten's enhancing the flavor of Strahd with new monsters, new PC options, which are sure to be great additions to your game. I've pre-ordered Van Richten's from Beetle and Grimm, as well as placed an order for Curse of Strahd Legendary Edition, so I'm eager to see how the additional content Beetle and Grimm is famous for ties in Van Richten's to Curse of Strahd. I'm really excited to see if they had some of the same ideas I do. For those who have never purchased a Curse of Strahd book or any of the tie-in products, the Curse of Strahd Revamped box is a good way to get the adventure, a Taraka deck, and a Curse of Strahd DM screen without breaking the bank. I have an opening review of the Revamped box from when I first started the channel, and I will put a link to that in the description below too. Chapter 5 is the final chapter of the book, and it contains the bestiary for this book. All in all, between NPCs and monsters, there are 36 new stat blocks in this book and 0 magic items. This number is extremely underwhelming considering the vast amount of content the Domains of Dread encompasses, and I feel the only way to do this setting any justice is to really hit the pedal in a bestiary themed book similar to Volo's or Mordenkainen's. One of the biggest absences from this book is stats for the Dark Lords. None of them, not even Strahd, who already has established 5e stats, is present in this book. Yes, it does make recommendations of which stat blocks you can use, but I would like to have bona fide stats for the Dark Lords to make them truly unique. This makes Curse of Strahd, even if you aren't running the adventure, a pretty key tie-in to this book. One thing that features in Curse of Strahd that this book says to make use of is the Taraka deck. This book gives 0 guidance on how to actually use the Taraka deck, so Curse of Strahd is very useful here. While we're talking about tie-in props like the Taraka deck, it is worth noting that the back of the book features art for a very cool looking spirit board, commonly also called a Ouija board. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see this released as a physical prop from Gale Force 9 or WizKids in the near future. But if not, Ouija boards and spirit boards are manufactured by many game developers and can be picked up to be used as a prop from your friendly local game store. All in all, this book is a lot of great content. However, it is a book of a lot of wasted opportunities and is a prime example of why I personally don't like Wizards of the Coast revisiting established settings, and I want to see 5e tread new waters. This book is great for the 5e generation of players, but has little that a bona fide veteran will not have seen before beyond player options and monster stats. For this reason, I have to give Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft a 6 out of 10, but the special edition gets a 7 out of 10 because damn, this artwork is gorgeous. Do you agree with my assessment? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you feel I deserved it, please leave a like and consider subscribing. In the meantime, cheers, and may the rolls be with you.